Welcome back to the Tracy Take. I am Tyler here with my brother Ryan, and the 2024 offseason is officially here with the end of the 2023 Super Bowl here. Congratulations again to the Kansas City Chiefs. But now let's move on to probably our favorite talking point is in talking about the opinion and the strategy and what teams will be doing. And once again, it's like deja vu all over. The Chicago Bears essentially control the draft process for every other team. Once again, they
Yeah.
had the number one pick thanks to Frank Wright and the Carolina Panthers. So, what we're going to do today is we're going to break down some of their options here, starting off with number one, trading their current quarterback Justin Fields, and then selecting a QB, and then which QB that might be. Then we're going to lead into the second potential option that I would say is potentially likely, which is trading back and keeping Fields, and then drafting another key player that they like, whether that be a receiver or a potential offensive lineman or best defensive player available. But they had to pick at 9, so that's going to be interesting to kind of digest. Or a third option, and Ryan, you were talking about this slide before. Just draft at number 1, but don't take a receiver. They could keep Fields, or don't take a QB and keep Fields and draft Marvin Harrison Jr. or Malik Neighbors, I guess. But it's already, I don't think that's a good idea to begin with, because to your point on what we'll get to in the second point. So let's start here with number 1 and talk about a little bit on why this channel as a whole, really until said otherwise, Caleb Williams is going to be the starting quarterback for the Chicago Bears at the start of the 2024 NFL season. And with that does come the Justin Fields trade.
Yeah. And so one thing kind of before, I think we get into all of this is just that to me, I think I'm going to start out and come out and say I think Caleb Williams is probably the top prospect in this class. I just think you look at the previous quarterback prospects and what he brings to the table. I think he's up there. I don't know if he's quite as good as Trevor Lawrence was, but again, up there. And I really think that he brings a lot to the table. And you by drafting him number 1 overall, you get an immensely talented quarterback who had a college system or an offensive system in college that a lot of people have complaints about. I know Lincoln Riley is considered this evolutionary offensive mind, but a lot of people also don't like kind of what it does to skill position players and offensive linemen and just kind of the situations that it puts them in. And it doesn't have the most amount of structure. And I think if you get him in a professional offense that, frankly, will have a lot of structure, he showed a couple seasons ago that he does a decent job operating in structure. In a Lincoln Riley system, but there were just more plays in structure 2 years ago than there were last year. So
I also think to add on to that as well is, especially everybody now is looking at what the Chiefs just did and looking at the Chiefs team as a whole, which objectively was, I would say, average outside of their quarterback. And Caleb Williams' comp is Patrick Mahomes, just with his improvisation capabilities. I remember the first time I watched him, and my first thought even was this dude looks like Patrick Mahomes, and just the way that he plays his improvisation skills. Every team is going to want that guy. And with the Chicago Bears now having the first overall pick, they can control really if they want him. And it's nothing against Justin Fields, who I think took a huge leap forward, but they're going to get Caleb Williams on a very team-friendly contract for what he is projected to bring to them. Well, Justin Fields, in a couple years, if they accept his rookie option, his fifth-year option, is going to be paid a lot of money, even if he's just an average quarterback. That's still, but Daniel Jones got $40 million a year.
Yeah, and he's better than Daniel Jones. Yeah. So although I think the Giants are regretting that contract, also that they really only pinned themselves down for 2 years and that was a 4-year, $160 million deal. And they only gave him the $80 million guaranteed. Yeah. So
let's stick here real quick before we move into some potential teams that would trade for Justin Fields. And kind of, why do you like Caleb Williams more than Drake May and Jada Daniels?
People can point to the Notre Dame game that was just really bad, and I think that was more Caleb Williams might have just had a bad game, and also I think you look at USC's roster as a whole, and very young, very inexperienced, just not quite up to par. And a lot of the pressure was put on Caleb Williams to just create. And I think everybody makes fun of him for the crying clip, which I think is a little odd. I mean, he really cares. I think he was just a little overcome with emotion in that moment. but I think in that moment was also a great deal of frustration because that was the loss that really kind of pushed them out of contention for being in the playoffs. And these guys work super hard to get to that point. And I think you look at his physical traits and just his arm strength. 2 years ago, he showed that he can operate in structure when it's there. And again, this last year, there were just not a lot of plays in structure. He has the physical abilities to make any throw on the field. He has the accuracy that you want in a top prospect. He has he's a gamer too. Like that's one thing that I think people underestimate about Caleb Williams. And I mean, even against Washington and Oregon, he was willing those teams to even be close in contention in those matchups. And his teammates really like him. And again, not to knock Justin Fields on any of these things, but I do think when you look at some of the other guys, they do have some of these like random mistakes that Justin Fields has. So starting out with Drake May, watching Drake May on tape, one, he has the best combination of all skill sets that I think you look for: size, arm strength, accuracy. Right, like he is kind of like that full package. However, he's only 21, so he's young, a little young and inexperienced, and also he has some very odd, just like random misses, like all over his tape that definitely need to be worked out. I think a lot of it's footwork. He's just not quite like getting set before all of his throws. And he does have some really nice off-platform throws when he's rolling out of the pocket. But sometimes he just misses like wide open receivers. And that I will say, I did say that about Trevor Lawrence when he was coming out of the draft, that every now and then Trevor Lawrence would just miss easy throws. And Drake May kind of has that same trait about him. And then also I think you look at Jaden Daniels. One, he is 6'4", but he's only about 205 pounds. Very slender built. And Jaden Daniels doesn't really read the middle of the field that great. He kind of gets lost in that mush. He throws outside the numbers really well. He also, of the three, has the weakest arm. I would say he probably has an above average NFL arm. It's just when you're being compared to Drake May and Caleb Williams, like those are two elite arms.
Yeah,
right there. So that's another, I guess, knock with air quotes on Jaden Daniels in this process.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I think another thing too, it's something similar as well. It's like we heard this last year, and it's like well, we hear this every year with these quarterback prospects. I also remember this too. Then with Trevor Lawrence as well, since we brought him up. That was the first draft of this channel, and it was one of those things where it's like people like trying to find nitpicky things and stuff like that. Like maybe you take Zach Wilson or Trey Lance, maybe Mac Jones is better just because XYZ. It was one of those. It's almost like the smart decision. Like if Trevor Lawrence turns out to be a bust, I'm not going to blame the Jacksonville Jaguars GM for taking him first overall. And I compare that then to this situation here. If Caleb Williams doesn't turn out to be the right pick, if he wasn't the best quarterback in this class, I'm not blaming them because he is just on paper, just visually, he was the ready quarterback as of right now that you'd want to build your franchise for. Nothing against Drake May or Jaden Daniels. And I could even make the same comparison last year. I think Bryce Young, with knowledge, I also think Bryce Young would probably just put it to a horrible situation. So that's a totally separate video. But I think this is just the right pick to go with Caleb Williams here. If they end up saying like if they trust Justin Fields and they think that they can build around him and take that next step, because this was the best Chicago Bears team that Justin Fields has been on, and I know it's only his third year, but in a little while, that's been the best Bears team that I think I've seen in a decent bit. So, but with that being said, though, too, I think Justin Fields will take the right steps and strides forward. What are some of the potential teams that immediately come to mind that they would want to trade with? And like the Falcons right here, I mean, that's number one. I think we're the team that's ready to go and do it. We also, too, I think one thing as well, what comps people have been seeing online and what I've been seeing online, what I think would be fair would be like a second round pick and a day 3 pick, maybe like a second rounder and a fifth rounder, second rounder, fourth rounder. I even saw as well potential one with some compensatory picks in 2025 as well if you want to do a third rounder here, but have sort of benchmark things that you can include in for another pick. So I think the Falcons is one. I think Denver and Las Vegas Raiders, I think, are one. sneaky one as well. And be sure to subscribe as well if you're a Steelers fan watching this. But I think the Steelers are a potential sneaky pick as well. I think Mason Rudolph playing in the playoffs was a huge indicator on what they think of Kenny Pickett because he was healthy to play. And so
that to me, I think, is really telling because Mike Tomlin has always been a guy that's been very kind of upfront with how he feels. And I think if he had any trust left that Kenny Pickett could go out there and play at a decent enough level, I think he would have, because I think we all know what they think of Mason Rudolph. They think he's a perennial backup. They went out and got Kenny Pickett while Mason Rudolph was on the roster. So definitely just an interesting situation in Pittsburgh. Another team too, I think New England is in that category simply because I think New England, they need to address quarterback, wide receiver, and offensive tackle in this draft. And there are a few ways that they, I think, could address all three with top 50 picks. But to me, the most likely way is if they ended up striking a deal with Chicago and maybe swapping pick number 3 for pick 9. Maybe Chicago throws in a future second in Justin Fields, maybe to go up that high. Because I mean, realistically, if you're going from 9 to 3, you're probably throwing in a future first, anyways, as well. If not, maybe even a little bit more. And so I think like that would be a good deal for both parties involved. Yeah. And so that's another team that I think could be in there. And one thing I will say, and I guess this is kind of a good transition into the next option here, is that if they do decide to stick with Justin Fields, I wouldn't really fault them, because if they don't identify Caleb Williams as this generational talent, which to be fair, some people don't have him as that.
Well, I will say too, to add on to that, it's not just Caleb Williams. It's also they have to not like Drake May or Jaden Daniels. True. I don't think as well. So it's 3 guys that they have to be like, I'm not super high on them.
But I think Jaden Daniels and Drake May both have enough flaws on their tape to where like that would be, I think, more of a lateral step. Whereas I think Caleb Williams could come in and give you high level NFL play as a rookie. And at least be where Justin Fields is now, if not maybe even a little bit better, especially as a passer. Yeah. And for me, I think if you're going to think about taking Drake May or Jaden Daniels, like that's where I think those guys are on the same level as Justin Fields. Even I know that was a loaded quarterback class in 2021, but I think if you look at what Justin Fields was coming out, I think he was a little underrated as a prospect coming out. And then I also think Chicago might have did him a little dirty through the first couple years there, just not quite giving him the talent, putting him in an offensive system that didn't really utilize, I think, his skill sets to the best of their ability. And so I think now they definitely have something maybe a little bit closer to that. However, they did also get rid of their offensive coordinator and bring in a new guy. But again, I just think if they do decide to go the Justin Fields route, it would be interesting to see kind of what type of compensation that they would get. Also, if they want to get a guy like Marvin Harrison Jr., how far back would they really even be willing to trade if they keep Justin Fields?
Well, I would even think, because if they want to keep Justin Fields and then they still want to get Marvin Harrison Jr., I think the asking price to move up even just one spot is going to be more than normal. Yeah. The Commanders are sitting there with 2 second-round picks, both at 36 and at 40. Bears don't have a second-round pick at all. So they want to roll with Justin Fields, move back that one spot, ask for the second-round pick. And I would think then, too, just with the asking price, I think the Commanders would absolutely give that up to then go and get Caleb Williams or go and get their guy. Because even then, too, moving to New England as well, just to bump up them, just with how many teams that would want to trade up. Washington, New England, I'll throw the Giants in there. Falcons for sure. Minnesota at 11, Denver at 12, Vegas at 13, maybe even Saints at 14. Now, those last 3 are pretty far out. It would be probably 3 or 4, I would say, first-round picks on top of then this 2024 that they'd had to give up to go get their guy. So essentially almost the entire rookie contract of Caleb Williams to go get this guy. But still, I don't know. Shoot, I mean, the Broncos gave up a lot to trade for Russell Wilson, and we saw how that worked out.
Yeah, but I will say for the Broncos, they already are very limited on draft capital. And now, granted, they do have players that could be involved in that, like Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton. And so it's just going to be interesting to kind of see what those packages are, because I do think you're right. I think teams have probably already been calling them, but Washington, New England have been like, that's probably a first and a second for those teams. I think for the Falcons, it would probably be very similar to the Panthers trade. I think you'd be talking Kyle Pitts, this year's first, next year's first, maybe like an additional third somewhere down the line.
There'd definitely be additional picks, but it would be
Yeah.
another key player that could instantly come and start. I think Kyle Pitts would be a very unique fit there. If they don't want to do players, then it would be probably 2024, 25, 26 at least. Plus, then I would say they have 2 third-rounders. I bet they'll throw in one of those third-rounders for this year as well. And then a couple other day 2, day 3 picks, probably in 25 and 26 as well. And so that's just for the Falcons, to your point, then too. So I couldn't even imagine then what it would be like for the teams following them. So
yeah, exactly. And so and then kind of to bring us home with the third option, if they want to keep Justin Fields and they still want to go after Marvin Harrison Jr., I really think that they would be willing to take a lower price from those first 2 teams, Washington and New England, to potentially move up, because I think the more and more that we learn about Drake May and Jaden Daniels, I think the more and more likely that those guys are going to be picks 2 and 3, right? And so, barring if this trade would actually happen, but like if New England offers Chicago a first and a second for pick 1, like the first overall pick, like that would definitely, I think, do it, and then they could still get Marvin Harrison Jr. there at 3. Which I think is a good thing for both parties involved. And then also, if they were to do it with the Commanders, probably a similar deal to go up that high. So, like, and then they still get their key wide receiver to add to DJ Moore, Cole Kmet, and all of that. And this offense gets even better than it already was at the end of the season. So it's the Chicago Bears right now. They're kind of playing with a little bit of a loaded deck. I'm really curious to see and hear what all the Chicago Bears fans are thinking is going to happen and what they want to happen. But yeah, I like they hold all the cards in this draft right now.
Once again. So
yeah, exactly. So 2 years in a row.
It was crazy too. Just kind of the final thought as well. Like I was looking at the depth chart before this, and they do need to improve at receiver. I think that's where the number 9 pick comes in. Their actual pick coming to play. Because even then too, they could trade up to go and get Rome Odunze, Malik Neighbors. Heck, maybe they could even trade up if with the Chargers. So to say, like let's say somehow Marvin Harrison Jr. falls to 5, like they'll have the draft capital there, I think, to trade up for him, especially then too if they get a second for the Justin Fields trade. To go and get Marvin Harrison Jr. So they need to beef up the receiving room a little bit. But still, Cole Kmet, I mean, is I think an underrated tight end in the league. I would say above average for sure. I got to look at this defense. They can add a little bit on the edge rusher position, which I think they can do in free agency, but also in this draft as well. But the linebacking group is probably one of the best in the league. I would say then this young secondary is improving a lot. Tyreek Stevenson had a great year. Kyler Gordon and also Jaquan Brisker as well are improving a lot after their second year. So this team's only going to keep getting better and better. And then you go and look at these 2 top 10 draft picks that they have. And they can go walk away with Caleb Williams and Rome Odunze and then get a second-round pick as well to add some guys. I think the Bears are going to be – I mean, I don't want to overreact, but I think the Bears are serious NFC North division contenders because if they get the right thing, we saw what happened with C.J. Stroud, put in the right system with a good receiving room around him. And I think that they have a better offensive line than the Houston Texans.
For sure. And they have better receivers too.
The Bears?
Yeah, well, barring adding like a Rome Odunze or somebody.
Yeah.
Because DJ Moore is up there as I mean, he's realistically a top 10, 12 receiver in the league, I think. So if they go and add a top 10 pick to that room as well, that would be a really solid receiving room. So and then you have Cole Kmet and other guys on there as well. So it's just a really interesting situation. I'm really curious to kind of see how it all plays out. But let's go ahead and wrap up this video here. If you guys have not already, please go ahead and like and subscribe. It is the best way to help out the channel. It doesn't cost you guys a cent. While you're down there, go ahead and leave a comment on what you want to see the Chicago Bears do with the #1 overall pick. Do you want Caleb Williams? Do you want them to trade the pick and keep Justin Fields? Do you want Marvin Harrison Jr.? Let us know what you think. And on that, we will see you guys next time.